Hey everyone, Daniel Topor here and welcome to the Dancing with Doubt podcast, where we go deep into how leaders have overcome adversity to unleash their success and delve into the why. Why are we really here on this big, beautiful earth? On today's episode, I'm sitting down with an absolute powerhouse of a leader, Victoria Pelletier. Victoria is an award-winning Fortune 500 executive leader, #1 best-selling author, professional public speaker, board director, and entrepreneur. She's a strong advocate for women and the LGBTQIA+ community, and having overcome some serious hurdles at a young age, Victoria has built unstoppable resilience. In fact, I think she's even known as the turnaround queen by former colleagues and employers for her ability to inspire, ignite, and create growth. Victoria is vibrant, inspiring, and insightful, and I'm absolutely thrilled with the opportunity to catch up with her. In this episode, we delve into turning adversity into achievement, the importance of a personal brand, even in corporate, embracing diversity, and what the future of work means for leaders. So for me, this is a deep dive into how we can repurpose the cards that we're dealt, along with the skills that we learn to become strong, positive leaders. Thanks for lending me your ears wherever in the world you are. Episode 5, let's dance. Victoria, it's an honor to have you here. Welcome to the Dancing with Doubt podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Victoria, fair to say you've lived a professional life full of milestones. A CEO by 24, president by 35, CEO by 41, countless awards on the journey. Like as standalone achievements, these are really, really impressive. And having overcome extreme adversity so early in life, I think they're simply incredible. How have you done it?
Well, again, thanks for having me, and I'm happy to share a little bit of my story and hopefully some nuggets that people will find beneficial to take away into their own personal and professional lives. So it's interesting, Daniel, that I share as openly let's call it my origin stories now, much more so than I would have even 10 years ago. And I recognized that I needed to do it because I was doing a disservice for all those that, whether I coached or I mentored them, or as you sort of read out my background and history and these accolades or recognition, I needed to share with people my why. And for me, that is overcoming extreme adversity. And by that, I'll share, I was born to a drug addicted teenage mother who was exceptionally abusive to me, pushing me upstairs, downstairs, carelessness that caused a cigarette on my eye or a patch for months. So I went in and out of the child welfare system, removed from her care several times. And then, however, I am fortunate. There was a couple that knew Julie, my biological mother, who would often take me from her after one of these episodes. And finally, the woman that eventually became my mother said to her, "We want to take her away from you." And so I was fortunate to be adopted. But socioeconomically, lower economic status. And so a combination of sort of my biology and the trauma I'd experienced. And then I was never without food and clothing, but there wasn't much else. So no school trips, no vacations with my parents, that kind of thing. That's when I started working at such a young age, at age 11. I became determined that I would be better than the biology or circumstance. So that is a big part of my why and what has fueled me to try to challenge the status quo and do more, different, better consistently.
Wow. And thank you so much for sharing such a personal and such a difficult moment in your life with the world. Yeah, I think it just shows your strength and your fortitude. And I think that there's probably Victorias out there that need to hear that.
Exactly why I share it so openly, whether it's, not something similar or some other adversity. I just want people to understand that they can lead their own unstoppable journey and version of whatever their choices for success in life looks like.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like in terms of having overcome such extreme adversity, do you feel that you actually use that as a fuel to get to where you are today, and that you're a stronger professional and you've chosen to go into the corporate world, that is as a result of finding that fuel so early in life?
It certainly helped. Now, resilience that I've developed has come with a multitude. I mean, those were what I shared with you, Daniel, was the early part of my years. I could share many, many more from, unfortunately, I was raped at 14, to an abusive boyfriend then at
Wow.
19. So that's a whole other conversation over, relationships and choices, that I've made, and that I had to learn and grow from. But even to the adversity in the work world. So you mentioned, I became COO at 24. Well, I was the only woman, the youngest by 2 decades. I came out as, LGBT in my youth. I was married to a woman. I'm now married to a man. So being queer and what does that look like, to 18 mergers and acquisitions that all come with like substantial transformation and change. These are just some of them. The reality is I've had a ton of obstacles, adversity, challenge. And I do attribute the early years to me being able to be resilient. But I think there's a couple of things related to that. I do think there's an element of it that's just in my DNA. We talk about fight or flight. I am a fighter. And I do think that's something innate, in my DNA. My, friends joke that it's whether it's because I'm a Taurus, so I don't really follow astrology, or I used to be really, really red hair when I was young. Where you could say it comes from somewhere innately in my DNA, but I also think there's a learned level of what I call healthy resilience, being tough and shouldering it all, but compartmentalizing and never dealing or processing with it isn't healthy. And so for me, it's also been a muscle that I've had to exercise to get better at how to deal with the challenges that come my way. And my adoptive mother was incredibly helpful at the time. As a teenager, I hate her sitting me down and going like, Tori, we need to talk through this and understand. And I was like, oh, mom, right? But I look back now, and that ability to be incredibly like self-reflective, self-aware, and try and process, and then start to think and act and model new thinking and behavior, that has helped me today.
Hmm. And when you say modeling behavior, obviously we can only model what we see around us and the people around us. So is it fair to say that you had good role models at these key stages in your life so that you could change around the trajectory of where you were headed?
I sort of I laugh or chuckle a little bit at that because no, I actually don't think I've had very good role models. In fact, I almost aspire to be nothing like the people I've had in my life. Now, my mother, the woman who raised me, a phenomenal woman, and there's things about her that I have modeled. She was probably the best role model, but she was diagnosed with manic depression in my teens, and I moved out. My dad was a horrible individual and not a great husband to my mom. So my role models, whether it's in the relationships that I've had, the kind of family dynamics that I have and strive to have, and even in the work world, being the kind of leader, often come from seeing people that I want to be nothing like. I don't want to act like them. I don't want to be that kind of friend, partner, lover, leader, colleague.
Wow. It's 7:45 in the morning here in Australia when we're recording this, and this is already hit a new level.
See that it's not later and you could have had a drink to go with this. Alcoholic, the adult beverage kind.
Yeah. Wow. And in terms of your development as a corporate leader, obviously resilience. You've mentioned resilience, and you've got a personal brand, Unstoppable You. How how do you feel that has actually progressed over time as you have expanded yourself and as you have brought new people into your life through the business world? Do you feel that you've actually evolved and changed along the journey?
Oh yeah, yeah. I made some pretty big mistakes earlier in my career, and being self-reflective, I understand how and why I made them. So becoming a leader, my first leadership role was actually at 14. I was the assistant manager for the shoe store I worked at. And so by the time I became COO 10 years later, yes, I'd had leadership experience, but there was one a bit of imposter syndrome being so young, and it was a stretch role for me. Absolutely was a stretch role for me. And so I wasn't sure I belonged there. So that was one part of it. The other was going back to my youth, there's the one thing I lived with for a very long time that I needed to learn to deal with and unlearn, quite honestly, was this fear of being rejected and being vulnerable. And what would that mean? So, for me as a leader, I showed up all business all the time. I wasn't going to show you that I had emotions. I wasn't going to be vulnerable. When I walked into the meeting room, we like dived into the agenda to get stuff done. And I was highly effective at delivering business results. And I think were people in business who certainly liked me, but when it came to my team, I would suggest they probably feared me rather than wanted to follow me. And so I got a really bad nickname as the Iron Maiden at some point. And that's where I had to go, holy cow, like this one, it's actually not who I am innately. My nickname is Turtle. My best friend's given me, right? The tough, unstoppable, unbreakable exterior, but I'm actually all marshmallow inside, where I cry at the Humane Society commercials. I'm constantly like, my husband just passes me the box of Kleenex as we're, watching something on television, but I didn't let anyone see that. And I wasn't building like really trusted relationships that come from a place of being vulnerable, of sharing my life and myself with people. So I had to unlearn that. And so when we talk about even role models and modeling actions and behavior, again, I didn't actually have any around me. I just knew I needed to do the opposite of how I was
Mhm.
showing up, because perception becomes people's reality. And and so it took a lot of me kind of leaning into what made me uncomfortable, like sharing my emotions and my feelings, and not starting the meeting like just right on a business agenda and getting to know one another. That wasn't natural. I mean, now it's completely almost innate for me, but I had to do it like practice, going back to like building a muscle over and over and over again to, become
Yep.
a very different kind of leader.
Yep. I can actually really relate to that. My first proper sort of leadership role, I think I was 28 at the time, and it was for a fintech company. And I pretty much went from being a project manager to actually being a head of a whole department. And I traditionally thought that, leaders had to be tough, show no emotions, basically what you said now, get straight into it, business. And that was kind of running okay. And then the pandemic hit. And obviously, with the pandemic, we all had to work from home, those of us that worked in an office. And you don't just become a manager, you have to become almost like a bit of sometimes a shoulder to cry on, sometimes a bit of a spiritual leader. Your role has to greatly expand. And I found myself way out of my depth because I didn't actually know how to speak to people and connect on that level in a business sense. Personally, yeah, no worries. So I can really relate to that. Sometimes you just have to be thrown in the deep end, and sometimes you learn it organically. But either way, you have to get there if you're a leader, right?
Exactly. And we're all, you know what? I think the other thing about important thing about being a leader is admitting, I don't know what I don't know, and I'm going to learn, and we're going to do it together. And I think that kind of humility actually helps tremendously.
Yeah, for sure. Something that really, really interests me about you is actually your, obviously a very seasoned corporate leader, Fortune 500. You've got an amazing CV, but you've also got a really, really strong personal brand. And I can see that you do a lot of public speaking and a lot of diversity and inclusion work. To me, that's super interesting because that's like transcending for me like a few different elements that I'm interested in. Tell us, what's the relationship in your eyes between having a personal brand and also being a corporate leader? Are the two linked? Any actionable advice that you could give to people?
Yeah, so I learned it when I made the shift from in I started my career, I'll say, like working in I worked for a bank while I was in university, and in leadership there, but that was primarily focused around a business to consumer model. And I had a marketing team who would be out there, trying to get new customers, et cetera. And when I made the shift to that COO role, I almost all of the functions of the organization reported into me except for finance, so sales and marketing. And that was the moment where, and I wouldn't have called it a personal brand back then. I don't know if I knew the vernacular or we were talking about it quite that way, but it was more thinking about, well, why are people coming and buying our company's services, and what differentiates us beyond cost? Like, that's not what it's all about. And so at that point, it was trying for myself and for my team, even when we just showed up at conferences, in a very different way. And so I've been focused, just so you know, and your listeners, if they look at kind of, you Google me and I'm a lot of the first many, many pages. But I've been at it for 20 something years. So I will say that it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. But a lot of people think it, and particularly in the business world, that it is that interconnectedness with the company you work for and the job that you hold or title that you hold there. And that is only one part of it. So what I'd say is, you are the CEO of brand you, and
Mhm.
you need to develop the narrative, the what people say about you when you're not in the room. You curate that, and it can evolve and change over time as you grow and maybe you pivot. And so for me, when you think about personal brand, it's a combination of really four things. It's more than that, but that your eminence and that, or subject matter expertise. That's where it gets a little bit more connected to who and you work for and what you do. But again, that's only one part of it. The next is, what are you passionate about? So we show up as the whole person to work every day. So I'm passionate about many things that are still connected to the work I do, leadership and culture and diversity and inclusion. But I'm also passionate about advancing and supporting those from diverse backgrounds. And again, connected to my work. So what are you passionate about? But it can also be hobbies and interests and things that just build connection with others. The next part is what makes you different? What is your unique value proposition? And for me as a leader, it's now the fact that I'm a very human centered leader that's focused on creating cultures that people thrive and want to work in. The fact that I'm radically candid, I will give you the hard message, but I do that from a place of care and compassion to help people move forward. Those are all things that makes me different than others. And then the last thing is start to think about, what do you want to be known for? Like, what's the legacy and impact that you want to leave behind? For me, yes, I've been a part of these mergers and acquisitions, and I've driven billions of dollars of sales and revenue and lots of profitability for the companies I work for. But that's not what's going to be on my tombstone. So you need to think about all of those things and then be incredibly intentional about how and where you show up online. And the fact is, I say online, but as my kids will tell me or text me, IRL, in real life, we need to show up exactly as we do as well. So the Victoria you see, digitally will be the same Victoria you
Mhm.
see when you meet me face to face.
And one day I hope to have a beer with you face to face.
Absolutely.
So basically, what you're saying, if you do want to become a leader, even in the corporate world, it is actually important to cultivate your personal brand and be conscious of the messages that you're giving and the way that you show up. So almost you kind of almost need to create a small business within yourself in order to progress. Is that a fair way of paraphrasing?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you can't rely on the organization or the leaders that change quickly, to do that for you. So, as I said, you're the CEO of Brand You. So, treat it very much like a business. And not, by the way, don't treat it like it's a separate part of your job. Like, this is innately how you manage your career. So, you need to ensure you create time and space to spend time on not just building the brand, but consistently engaging with that and being, quite present on whatever social channels, platforms, and places you choose to be in real life.
Hmm. Definitely. And I'm sort of fairly new to this aspect of it. I only launched this podcast about 3.5 months ago, and brand Daniel Topor is just getting started. It can be a little bit daunting and awkward at times, particularly when you try and make that transition from being a certain professional that everyone sees online to actually being a human and actually expressing human emotions and vulnerabilities. And that's been probably one of the biggest eye-opening things for me. And taking that mask off has been challenging. Did you find that you had similar challenges, and what would be some steps to help people overcome to take these steps?
Yeah, I did. As I said earlier, I wouldn't have shared as openly my story, my sort of origin story and lived experience until maybe a decade ago. I think I certainly did it before that, but in smaller scale settings. And then I realized as I gained this bigger and bigger platform, as I was regularly in media and things like that, and people would have this view of me based on what they saw digitally or what articles I wrote or they read about me, that I needed to do more and share more. And that's in large part too, I make a very intentional um, commitment to showing that whole person. So a great example for me is, I think a lot of people see, I won a lot of awards last year. I'm fortunate that people recognize me. So, and new, professional photos, and you see all these things that have come out. But the reality is 2022 was an absolutely brutal year for me. So at the start of 23, when everyone's doing New Year's resolutions and sharing, I said, look, I tell you that I'm resilient, that I'm unstoppable, but I want to actually talk to you about, what this last year has looked like for me and how it's tested my resilience. And I shared quite openly the challenges, whether it's my husband's back surgery, then my father-in-law passed away suddenly, my younger one's mental health issues. I had a serious accident and 2 surgeries, like da 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 da, like all, and but that makes me human. And so going back to like the personal brand and what do people know about me? Yes, they know I win awards. They know I lead businesses. They know I'm a speaker, but who am I really? And
Mm,
so me sharing those vulnerable moments makes me human. And I think builds this connection, even if I haven't met you face to face yet, or we haven't had even a virtual beer. At least people can build this rapport with me because I'm a real human. I'm a no, I don't know if I can swear on your podcast, but no
go for
BS. Like,
it.
yeah, okay, yeah, there's no bullshit with Victoria, right? There's no meeting that's going to happen after the meeting. Like, this is me. And
Yep.
that means I'm going to share, the good, the bad, maybe not always the ugly, but I'm going to share pretty transparently with you. And I think
Yeah.
that's important to, again, humanity and building trusted connection with people.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those messages. I 100% agree. I think if there's a tendency of people to look at someone's CV or look at their profile and assume that they're just, an Iron Woman or an Iron Man or whatever. But like you said, things do happen in real life. Life gets in the way, issues happen, we have adversities that we need to overcome. And if we're all conscious of that and we can all understand that we are human and it's okay to be human, then we can actually connect to each other better. And, like you're sharing now, I think it will inspire quite a lot of people out there to just be okay with whatever's happening in your life because you can overcome it, as you've shown.
That's right.
Looking at something that you just said earlier about high purpose. What is your high purpose? Why are you on this earth, Victoria?
My goal, my legacy, is to create a better community, and I use that broadly. And so, community is, not only in the workplaces I'm in, the home I live, but also all those I have the opportunity to touch, is to create, great impact for them, being a great leader who lifts as I rise, who advocates for those who cannot for themselves. And also on the corporate world, I mean, I love working in the business world. It's also for me that legacy, going back to like the ability to have this human centered leadership approach and really great culture without a trade off for business results. And so for me, my legacy is about being that kind of person who had a positive impact and ideally helped all of those around me, or made the world a better place.
Excellent. And I know that you're very, very passionate about diversity and inclusion, as you've just mentioned. And I think as a whole, at least, yeah, from what I'm seeing in the media, we're seeing a lot more organisations focus on this, which is great. Yet at the moment, there is this gigantic storm that's erupted with Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney. At a macro level, do you feel that there's serious headwinds in the corporate world for companies that are looking to be more inclusive?
Uh, I don't headwinds. No, not necessarily, unless you are selling into particular customer groups that sway, opposite of that from a values standpoint. I think most companies are trying to create diverse, equitable, inclusive cultures, but many have a very long way to go. There's almost a myopic focus on just the diverse workforce and bringing them in the front door without the focus on how to create policies, procedures, better leaders that speak and act in the way to create a sense of belonging for everyone. And so it's an incredibly multifaceted program, if you will, around DEI in the workplace. And it's this, like I said, there's this focus on the workforce, but it's workforce to the vendors or partners that you choose to engage with you, and are they diverse and what do they stand for? Then you start to look at the communities and the customers that you serve and how you show up, and this is where the Bud Light piece comes in, to then even just looking at the products and services themselves, and are they accessible to the customers you want to serve. And so where the headwinds come are for those companies who do stand up and demonstrate, whether it's with their marketing campaigns or putting, floats in the LGBT, the pride parades, or showing up at Caravana for, our Black communities, Caribbean communities. Like, those are all ways to demonstrate it. And so there's going to be headwinds by those who oppose it. And it saddens me that there are as many headwinds as they are as much noise around that in certain places around the world. For me, I'm a proud Canadian who happens to reside in the US, and it's incredibly divisive down here. And, we are seeing in certain, depending on where you live in the country, although you see it at a macro level, from a political standpoint, what's happening. So that's the part that saddens me. And that's where I think some of the headwinds may come from for companies trying to take a stand.
Because if you look at it at the most basic human level, we're talking about actually including a section of society that has been suppressed, that has been vilified sometimes in the media and in society more general. Literally, all we're trying to do is actually include those people in the discourse, include them in marketing, and include them in day-to-day life. For that to actually be a problem, I don't understand where this world is headed sometimes, when this is the sort of conversation that we need to have. And in Australia, it's not as polarized, I think, as America. It's kind of starting to get there with certain sections, but I cannot believe that we're even having this conversation in 2023. It's insane.
I know. I feel like we've gone back 30 or 40 years. And for me, it's also deeply personal. So I have two children, and my younger of two children just said about 6 months ago they would like to transition. So I had my older son at 23, the younger one, born female, is transitioning, and decided to go back at least for a year between high school and university to live with their older brother back in Canada. And I said, there's no better place for you right now. I'm currently living in Florida, and this is one of the worst places in the US to be if you're trans or queer.
Yep, yep. And I guess, leveraging your past experience and overcoming hardship, I think you'd obviously have some stories to tell, and some good actionable advice on how to overcome the I guess the challenges associated with what you've just mentioned.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think it comes from me. We also need to recognize that diversity comes in many, many forms. And I think the more traditional ones that most people think about is gender, is race, it's religion, it's sexuality. There's a lot of intersectionality between all of those, but there's also a ton of other types of diversity that include the invisible ones, whether it's, neurodiversity or different, types of abilities, or the lived experience people have. I mean, that's a big part of diversity, and what, quite honestly brings richness to workplaces and communities. And so my experience, the reason I've been so involved in the world of DEI for 20 plus years, is I often felt like I was the only, and I still have great
Mhm.
privilege as a white woman born in North America. And so, but with that privilege, I need to do something as well. And so I believe our voice is our power, and you don't have to be someone like myself with a, public platform stage or being an executive to do that. I think we can all own that. I mean, I was sitting at a lunch yesterday, and it was a woman who said that she thinks the Me Too movement's gone too far. She happens to be based in science, and some really great scientists have been terminated from their employment for claims of sexual harassment against others. And I'm like, so she's worried that, these amazing male scientists, are, being let go as a result of that. And I needed to say, look, I have a zero tolerance policy, 100% full stop. So whether it's in a small lunch setting or on public stages, I think we need to do all we can to raise voice and challenge people, and educate people, and try and help support others.
Yeah, well, that's what it comes down to. I mean, just because someone is good at something or even prominent or doing something amazing for the world should not excuse them from being a shit person, should not excuse them from breaking the law and actually hurting others. I mean, it's just so basic, yeah, for, at least for me. And it sounds like you're sort of in that same boat as well.
Yeah.
Coming back to this notion of actual meritocracy. So when there's a school of thought out there that says that if you're to become a leader, or if you're to do really well in life, then it needs to be based on your ability to actually get results. So I think that's that's a legitimate point, and I would tend to subscribe to that. However, we also know that not everyone's created equal. Not everyone has equal opportunity in terms of growing up, in terms of education, in terms of money, etc. What's your view on meritocracy and actually progressing in the business world?
So I think we need to, I think we need to look, at our workforce from a very, very different lens than we have traditionally. And you're talking, about, I think, performance and performance metrics. And those have been, traditionally defined in certain ways, depending on the role, that you're in. And I think there's this, first of all, I think the workforce is transformed dramatically, and there's much more focus on skills and the complement of different skills, and the need to therefore measure those skills differently. Not all of them are can be quantitatively measured. Some of them are qualitative. And so there's a, let's assess what we have in the workforce today from around the skills we have, not only for today, but because things are evolving so rapidly and transforming. Also, what are the skills we have and need to have in 2, 3, 5 years? And where are we going to be getting them? Are we building it from within? Are we buying it? Is it being automated? Like, what is it? And then assessing against that current workforce, against those skills and very different performance metrics. And so I think the notion of advancing because of one's ability to perform against clearly articulated and defined metrics that I hope span more broadly than, in my instance, it's typically, let's look at the sales and revenue and profitability. Well, actually, how about we assess, for a person in leadership, what do my team say around, level of leadership and engagement? Are they satisfied within the business? Hold me accountable to the diversity of the workforce. So there's a whole bunch of other metrics that need to be measured, that I think need to follow kind of this, facet between the business results, let's call it the leadership, if you're in a leadership position, and if not, like, how do you team with others within the organization? So look at it that way. But then I also think there's this other element, and then connectedness to diversity. And, that is, what are people's potential and their propensity to learn? And if we truly want to advance and move the needle from where it is today, and I will, quote two stats: Fortune 500 companies, only 53 female CEOs and only 6 Black CEOs. We must
Really?
do better.
Still?
Yeah.
Oh
Still,
my God.
that's increased. We actually had double digits for women, female CEOs, to now at 10 or 11%, whatever that's horrific. For me, only 4% of like venture capital funding go to women, less than 1% to Black founders. So like the data is there. And so we have to do better. And so we need to be strategically intentional. And I often talk to like CEOs or other C-suite executives to say there doesn't have to be a trade-off for performance or the meritocracy component with creating and building a diverse workforce. What you have to do is look at those skills. How are they performing with skills you need for today? And also, what is their potential and their propensity to learn? And that's where the intentionality is for me as a leader. If I see that someone might only have 7 or 8 out of the 10 skills I might list as important, it's my job as their leader to coach and develop them to bridge the gap.
Mm-hmm. So
And so I
basically,
think you can have both. There's not a trade-off.
So basically, what you're saying is past experience and skills are important, but your actual attitude and your potential to develop with the right coaching is actually almost as, if not more important, because you're looking at the future rather than the past, right?
Yeah, and you look at the pandemic and how much we all had to shift so quickly. The fact that the digital transformation is like massively accelerated. So the ability to be agile and change and pivot. I mean, that's one that's hard to measure, right? It's not how many widgets you're producing. And so that becomes exceptionally important.
Yeah, and have you ever had a key hiring decision that you've regretted, like using this sort of formula, or has it always held you in good stead?
Um, I have there. Well, yeah, I have had one, and it was many many years ago, and I had to let the person go within their first 3 months, and I was in Canada at the time, so there's like a 90-day probationary period generally, and I let him go during that time period. But I was exceptionally clear, like he was going to need to come in and transform the team he was going to be leading, et cetera. And it just really quickly I realized it wasn't going to happen, and so I needed to let him go, and that was all on me. There was no one else involved in that decision. I mean, sorry, I had to meet other people, but ultimately it was my hiring decision, and it was an error on my part. And I acted swiftly though, and so that's where I think it's important for a leader to, you know, like be well, one, make sure it should never come as a shock or surprise to an individual. So I was, several weeks in, 6 weeks in, I remember kind of having that, like, I'm not seeing where we need to go. So that open dialogue, that kind of radical candor, having it and coaching them along the path, but then moving pretty swiftly. And also being, although this was a human resource issue, so it's not like I would publicize it broadly, but at least certainly to my leader, I could say, like, it's me. I'm accountable. I'm the reason. And, here's what we're doing, and move forward.
Hmm. Wow. So basically, you've actually taken some of that accountability onto yourself. It sounds like it's not just fully the person. Yeah.
Oh no, I think it was my hiring decision. Now
Yep.
he wasn't performing, and he didn't, live up to what he told me through the interview process. And so, I mean, he told me one thing, but I ultimately hired him, and I believed him, and I went with my gut, and I thought he was going to be a good fit, and I was wrong.
Mm-hmm. How do you think these sort of conversations are going to go when we have AI bots instead of people?
I don't think like there's a lot of work that is going to be transformed, but we're always going to need humans, who, can, interact with the other humans. And just thinking about in business, like people do business with people they like and they trust and they want to do business with. But would you want me to be much more efficient and have more time to spend, with you as a customer, engaging with you versus knowing that I've got like 3 hours of paperwork that could now be automated, right? So I just think we need to think about it being done um, more efficiently, effectively. But we're going back to skills. The skills that we're going to need are going to be much more of those like innovation skills and people skills and the ability to interact. Although we're also going to need some like AI continues to learn by again, I'll say garbage in, garbage out, what's in there. I think there's a whole heck of a lot of garbage that exists out there that we're even going to need people to curate kind of what's in there and filter out some of the stuff because it's learning some bad things already.
Hmm. Yeah, and look, I think it's fair to say the AI revolution is here. At least if you read the media, and you've probably heard the term AI won't take your job, but someone that uses AI will. That's a pretty common one on LinkedIn at the moment, doing the rounds. Do you think that obviously, for repetitive tasks and tasks that require crunching a lot of info, I think we can probably agree that that will tend to shift towards AI. But what do you think is going to be the impact on leadership and management as a profession?
Well, you can't outsource to a bot leadership of other people. Uh, now,
Not
can
yet,
you?
anyway.
Well, no, but you know what? I actually think um, what it will do is there's a lot of data that can be gleaned that helps support leaders. And so we talked about productivity, and so that's measuring certain things. And I'm not talking about like measuring keystrokes as, there's some software out there that does to see if people who are sitting at home, are they actually working? Like, I'm not talking about that kind of thing. Even just going back to skills. So and this is public knowledge, so I'm not breaking any confidence, but I worked for IBM. And one of the things IBM did from a talent perspective, first of all, we got very focused at looking at skills many years ago. And what happened is there's lots of people that when they joined the company, they put up like an employee profile and skills, but then they never updated it, number one, or they took new courses or accreditation. So we actually started to, look at the digital footprint of our employees to start to infer their capability and their skills based upon the fact that we'd known they'd taken additional courses, that they worked on different projects, et cetera, so that we gave them greater opportunity for new roles or new opportunity. But it actually has the ability to, and many companies are looking at sentiment as well. Like, how do we as leaders then predict whether our employees are happy? And are they engaged? What are they saying on the various Slack channels as they're talking to other people? And it's not like a sort of big brother spy on you kind of thing. And if done well, it actually shouldn't give that level of detailed information, but it should produce reports that says, here's who's at risk in your organization. So I think technology and AI used effectively can help provide wonderful tools to leaders to help develop the team, and also recognize if they're not doing their job, having these amazing, one-on-one conversations, get a better sense of those who are unhappy or at risk to help inform them in terms of how they lead the team.
Mm-hmm. And did you find that sort of approach at IBM actually did have tangible results in terms of employee satisfaction and positive changes?
On the skills side, it was skills versus sentiment for a second. On skills, it was absolutely incredible, for us to recognize and even help build career paths for, others who might not have even known that existed. But when we even, saw things that I'm not going to say weren't natural, but maybe we didn't think, oh, like this is this logical path someone take, and we saw them navigate to different places, we could then open that up and offer that up as a conversation with how others were moving around this large organization. So from a career advancement standpoint and opportunity to do new and different work, it was hugely impactful to our employees.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that were at risk, well, actually, it wasn't as so much as their sentiment, but as understanding also the market pay dynamics, where they sat in their job bands. Were they a diverse employee? It allowed us to actually increase compensation when we knew there was potentially a risk, even just from a compensation standpoint alone.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so basically what you're saying is to all the managers and leaders out there, don't fear AI. It's actually going to give you more tools and give you the opportunity to get more insights about what's happening in the business and with your employees. So basically, you've still got to lift your game, but your job will still be there. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely.
Nice, nice. And Victoria, I know we're almost out of time. Signature question. If you could go back to your 20-year-old self, what is the one key piece of advice you would give yourself?
Oh, probably some of what I've already, shared with you here today around that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to show up and be my authentic self, that my fear of rejection and maybe not being liked was so misguided. And I think I personally and professionally have flourished from being me. Quite honestly, there's a quote from George Adair, and it says, "Everything you've ever wanted lives on the other side of fear." And a lot of those early years was based on fear.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish I could go back to that 20-something-year-old girl.
Yeah. Well, it looks like you're making a massive, massive impact now and making up for that. So
Thank you.
and what's next for Victoria? I know that obviously your brand is very prominent and hitting new highs every week with all the awards that you're winning. What's around the corner? What's next? What can we expect from you?
So I will go back to being a C-suite executive versus leading teams in the management consulting world that coaches for and consults for the C-suite. I want to stand on bigger and bigger stages, speaking and sharing this story, and continuing to advocate for diverse communities. So doing a lot of what I do now on larger stages,
Mm-hmm.
larger audiences to continue to share the message.
Awesome, awesome. And actually, I need to ask this: do you ever still get nervous when you do jump on stage?
Um, it's it's like those butterflies that are in there, like they're particularly when it's a really, really large audience. And it's thankfully it's usually only for like the first 60 seconds or so that I'm on stage. You might actually see my hands shake a little bit. And as soon as I settle into being on stage, I'm like, and it's amazing. So I actually think it gives me this like energy to start. So I don't think people need to totally think that you shouldn't be nervous at all. I think, embrace it a little bit and lean into it, and it actually can be hugely helpful, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Because I guess if you're not nervous, then you probably don't care as much, and if you are nervous, then you care, and it shows that you're there, and it's for a reason. So I always try and lean into the nervousness whenever I start. I was quite nervous before this, and I'm okay now, but it's because I actually give a shit.
Awesome.
Nice. And Victoria, if the audience do want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Easiest way is to go to my website, which is victoria-pelletier.com. And from there, you can read the content. I share videos and media on there, but you can also choose to connect with me on whatever your favorite platform is, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Yeah, I've really, really enjoyed your stories and insights. Yeah, pretty awestruck. I think you're a super inspiring human. So yeah, thank you again, Victoria. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
And there you have it, dear listeners. That's our dance for episode 5. We've gone deep on quite a few topics such as diversity, inclusion, personal brand, and the future of work, amongst others. If you've got value from this episode, I would really, really appreciate your support. Share the love, spread the knowledge, give us some feedback, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. It does make a huge difference and allows me to deliver even more goodness to you. You can find more episodes at our website, dancingwithdoubt.com. And as usual, I'll have my monthly blog up soon, reflecting on my conversations, in this case with Victoria, and giving some gratitude back. So thanks for lending me your ears wherever in the world you are. Till next time, may success be with you.